Looking back now, after 30 years, I can still remember the exact moment when everything changed. It wasn't when my husband first raised his voice at me. It wasn't when his mother made her first cutting remark about my cooking, my housekeeping, my inability to give her grandchildren fast enough. It was the night I dropped a casserole dish at a family dinner while I was 5 months pregnant with the child she'd been demanding for 6 years. I was 34 years old, a high school English teacher in a small town outside Austin, Texas. I had what everyone called a perfect life. A beautiful Victorian house on Maple Street that David and I had restored together, a job I loved, a husband who looked good on paper. David was an accountant at a respected firm, the kind of man who wore pressed shirts and remembered birthdays. His mother, Patricia, was a retired nurse who everyone in town respected. We looked like the American dream. But dreams have a way of crumbling when you look too closely. I met David when I was 28. I'd just gotten out of a difficult relationship and wasn't looking for anything serious. David was patient, attentive, romantic in all the traditional ways. He brought me flowers every Friday, called when he said he would, introduced me to his mother on our third date. I thought that meant he was serious about me. I thought it was sweet. Patricia loved me at first. She hugged me tight, called me the daughter she never had, asked when we'd get married. David proposed 6 months later, and we were married within the year. Patricia planned everything: the dress, the flowers, the venue, the menu. I told myself she was just being helpful. I told myself it was generous that she wanted to be so involved. The first year of marriage was an adjustment. David started calling me multiple times a day, just to check in. Where was I? Who was I with? When would I be home? He said it was because he missed me, because he worried, because he loved me so much. I found it suffocating, but when I mentioned it to my mother, she said I was lucky to have a husband who cared. Patricia visited every Sunday for dinner, then twice a week. Then she had a key to our house and would let herself in whenever she wanted. She'd rearrange my kitchen cabinets, criticize how I folded David's shirts, suggest I was spending too much money on groceries. David always took her side. Always. Even when I gently tried to establish boundaries, he'd say, "That's just how she is. She means well. She's only trying to help." When I didn't get pregnant right away, Patricia started making comments. Subtle at first. "My friend's daughter just had her third baby. You two should get started soon. David needs a son to carry on the family name." Then less subtle. "You're not getting any younger. Women your age have more difficulty conceiving. Have you seen a doctor? Maybe there's something wrong with you." I had tests done to placate her. Everything was fine. The doctor said we just needed to relax, that stress could be a factor. But how could I relax when Patricia was timing my cycles, asking invasive questions, suggesting herbs and supplements and positions? David thought it was funny. "She's excited to be a grandmother," he'd say, kissing my forehead like I was being unreasonable. By year 3, I'd stopped trying to set boundaries. It was easier to just let Patricia have her way. She picked out our furniture, our curtains, our vacation destinations. She had opinions about my hair, my weight, my wardrobe. David agreed with her on everything. I felt like I was drowning in my own home, but I kept telling myself that this was normal, that all marriages had challenges, that I was being too sensitive. When I finally got pregnant at 34, I thought things would get better. Patricia cried tears of joy. David was so happy he could barely speak. They both immediately started planning the nursery, picking out names, deciding on a pediatrician. I wasn't consulted. When I tried to voice my preferences, Patricia would say, "Oh, honey, I raised a child. I know what works." David would nod along. "Mom knows best," he'd say. The pregnancy was hard. I had terrible morning sickness the first trimester, and I was exhausted all the time. My doctor said it was normal, that I should rest as much as possible. But Patricia had different ideas. She started coming over every day after I got home from school, bringing casseroles and groceries and cleaning supplies. She'd clean my house from top to bottom while making comments about how I needed to keep things spotless once the baby arrived. "Babies get sick so easily. You can't have a dirty house." My house wasn't dirty. I kept it clean. But nothing was ever clean enough for Patricia. And David would come home from work to find his mother scrubbing baseboards and say, "See? This is why I love her. She takes such good care of us." Us. like it was the three of us in this marriage instead of two. I started pulling away, not from David, but from myself. I stopped voicing my opinions. I stopped arguing about the small things. I let Patricia pick out all the baby furniture, the paint colors for the nursery, the clothes. I let David make decisions about our finances without consulting me. I shrank myself down to fit into the small space they'd left for me in my own life. My friends noticed. Sarah from work pulled me aside one day and asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired from the pregnancy. She looked at me with concern but didn't push. My sister called and said I sounded different, sad. I told her I was hormonal. My mother visited and commented that David seemed controlling. I defended him. I defended all of them. Because what was the alternative? Admitting that I'd made a terrible mistake? That I'd married a man who valued his mother's opinions more than his wife's? That I was trapped? By my 5th month, I was showing noticeably. I loved feeling the baby move, those little flutters that reminded me someone was in there, depending on me. But even that joy was tainted. Patricia would put her hands on my belly without asking, would tell me how to sit, how to stand, what to eat. You're eating too much sugar. You need more protein. Don't cross your legs like that, it's bad for the baby. David started getting angry when I didn't follow his mother's advice. If Patricia told me to drink more milk and I forgot, he'd snap at me. She's trying to help you. The least you could do is listen. If I pushed back, even gently, he'd give me the silent treatment for hours. The house would fill with this terrible tension, and I'd end up apologizing just to make it stop. That's when I started noticing the other things. The way his jaw would clench when I disagreed with him. The way he'd grip my arm just a little too tightly when we were walking together. The way he'd raise his voice and then immediately apologize, saying he was just stressed from work. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. I told myself all couples had rough patches. I told myself things would get better after the baby was born. I was so wrong. The night it all fell apart was a Saturday in October. Patricia had insisted on hosting a family dinner at our house. She'd arrived early that morning with bags full of groceries, took over my kitchen, and spent the entire day cooking. David's aunt and uncle were coming, along with his cousin and her family. Patricia wanted everything to be perfect. I'd offered to help multiple times, but she kept shooing me away. You need to rest. You're carrying precious cargo. So I sat in the living room, feeling useless and anxious. David was watching football, occasionally calling out to his mother, asking when dinner would be ready. He didn't talk to me at all. When the guests arrived, Patricia presented me like a trophy. Look at her, 5 months along and absolutely glowing. David takes such good care of her. Everyone nodded and smiled. His aunt asked me about baby names. Before I could answer, Patricia said, "We're thinking David Jr. if it's a boy, or Patricia Marie if it's a girl." We hadn't discussed either of those names. I'd made a list of names I liked, but no one had asked to see it. Dinner was a production. Patricia had made pot roast with all the fixings, homemade rolls, 3 different vegetables, and 2 pies for dessert. She brought everything to the table with flourish, accepting compliments with false modesty. Oh, it was nothing. Just a little something I threw together. She'd been cooking for 8 hours. We all sat down, and the conversation flowed around me like I wasn't there. They talked about David's work, his childhood, family memories I wasn't part of. His cousin talked about her children's achievements. His aunt talked about her recent trip to Colorado. When I tried to contribute, to share a funny story from my classroom, David's uncle talked right over me about his golf game. David didn't notice, or didn't care. I felt invisible, like I was just the incubator for their grandchild, not a real person with thoughts and feelings and a life of my own. After dinner, Patricia asked me to help clear the table. I stood up, grateful to have something to do, and started stacking plates. David's aunt had brought a casserole dish for the vegetables, a heavy ceramic thing with handles. I picked it up carefully, balancing it on top of some plates. That's when David's phone rang. He answered it immediately, standing up from the table and walking toward the kitchen, talking loudly. I stepped back to let him pass, but my foot caught on the leg of my chair. I stumbled, tried to catch myself, and the casserole dish slipped from my hands. It shattered on the hardwood floor with a crash that seemed to echo forever. Pieces of ceramic and half-eaten green beans scattered everywhere. The entire room went silent. Patricia's face went white, then red. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "That was my sister's dish," she said, her voice shaking. "She gave it to me before she died. It's irreplaceable." I felt my stomach drop. I hadn't known. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to. I tripped, and—" "You're so careless," Patricia's voice rose. "Always so clumsy, so thoughtless. Do you have any idea what you've just destroyed?" The other guests were frozen, watching. No one said anything. No one came to my defense. David walked back into the dining room, phone still in his hand, and took in the scene. The broken dish, his mother's furious face. Me, standing there with my hands shaking, 5 months pregnant, on the verge of tears. "What happened?" he asked. "She broke my sister's dish," Patricia said, her voice breaking. "The only thing I had left of her." David's expression changed. His jaw clenched. His eyes went cold in a way I'd never seen before. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like I was an enemy. "How could you be so stupid?" he said. The word hit me like a slap. Stupid. He'd never called me that before. "I'm sorry," I said again, bending down to start picking up the pieces. "I didn't know. I'll buy you a new—" "You can't buy a new one," Patricia was shouting now. "It's irreplaceable. It meant everything to me." I was crying now, tears streaming down my face as I tried to gather the broken ceramic. A piece cut my finger, and blood welled up, but I barely noticed. I just wanted to fix it. I wanted to make it right. David grabbed my arm and pulled me to standing. Hard. His fingers dug into my skin. "Stop," he said. "You're making it worse." I looked up at him, at his face twisted with anger, and something in me broke along with that dish. "I didn't mean to," I whispered. "It was an accident." "Everything with you is an accident," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "You're careless. You're thoughtless. You don't think about anyone but yourself." His aunt and uncle were gathering their things, making excuses about needing to leave. His cousin was already heading toward the door, pulling her children with her. They didn't want to be here for this. They didn't want to witness what was about to happen. Patricia was still crying, standing over the broken pieces like they were the remains of her sister. "How dare you?" she said to me. "How dare you disrespect my family like this, after everything we've done for you?" "I'm sorry," I said for the 3rd time, my voice breaking. "Please, I didn't mean—" "Didn't mean?" David's voice rose. "You never mean anything. You never think. Do you have any idea how hard my mother works for this family? How much she does for us? And this is how you repay her?" I looked around the room, at the people who were supposed to be my family, and saw only judgment, only anger, only contempt. No one was asking if I was okay. No one cared that my hands were shaking, that I was pregnant and scared and hurt. "David," I said quietly, trying to reach the man I'd married somewhere underneath all this rage, "please, let's just—" "Let's just what?" He took a step toward me. "Let's pretend this didn't happen. Let's pretend you didn't just destroy something irreplaceable." His mother was watching us. His aunt and uncle had stopped at the door, frozen. I could see it on their faces, the recognition, the fear. They knew what was about to happen, and they were going to let it. "Maybe we should all take a breath," his uncle said weakly. "I'm sure it was just an accident." "Stay out of this," David snapped at him. Then he turned back to me. "You need to apologize properly. Get on your knees and apologize to my mother." Time seemed to slow down. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Get on my knees? I was 5 months pregnant. I'd already apologized. Multiple times. "David," I said, I said, "get on your knees." His voice exploded through the room. He grabbed my shoulders and pushed down, trying to force me to kneel. I resisted, tried to stay standing. "Stop," I said. "You're hurting me." That's when he slapped me. The sound cracked through the air. My head snapped to the side. Pain bloomed across my cheek. And then there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. I stood there, my hand going to my face, feeling the heat of where he'd hit me. I looked at him, at the man I'd married, at the father of my child, and saw a stranger. His chest was heaving, his face red, his fists clenched. Patricia hadn't moved. hadn't said a word. She was just standing there, staring. His uncle started. "David, that's—" "Get out," David said, not looking away from me. "All of you, get out." They left. They actually left. They grabbed their coats and their purses and their children, and they walked out of our house, leaving me alone with him and his mother. I heard the front door close, heard a car engine start, and I thought, this is when I run. This is when I leave. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, my hand still on my cheek, my baby moving inside me like she could feel my fear. "You've ruined everything," David said, his voice quieter now but somehow more terrifying. "This dinner was supposed to be perfect. My mother worked all day, and you had to go and destroy it." "I didn't mean to," I whispered one more time. "I don't care what you meant." He took another step toward me. "All I care about is that you disrespected my mother in her moment of grief. You made her cry. You humiliated us in front of our family." I looked at Patricia then, really looked at her. She was still standing there, still silent. Her face was pale, her hands were shaking, and she was staring at David with an expression I couldn't quite read. Fear? Recognition? Horror? "David," she said softly. "Maybe you should." "Not now, Mom." He didn't even look at her. His eyes were locked on me. "I need to teach my wife some respect." "Teach me!" The words hung in the air, and suddenly I was moving, instinct taking over. I turned toward the door, toward escape, my hand automatically going to my belly to protect the baby. I made it 3 steps before he caught me. His hand closed around my arm, spinning me back toward him. "Where do you think you're going?" "Let me go," I said, trying to pull away. "David, please. You don't get to walk away from this." He pulled me closer, his face inches from mine. His breath smelled like the wine he'd been drinking all evening. "You don't get to disrespect my mother and then just leave." I didn't mean to drop the dish. I was crying now, really crying, my words coming out in gasps. It was an accident. "Why won't you believe me?" "Because you're always making excuses." He shook me, hard. My head snapped back. "You're always playing the victim. Poor little Sarah. Everyone's always picking on her. Well, maybe if you weren't so damn incompetent." "David, stop!" Patricia's voice cut through. "You're hurting her." "So what?" He didn't even look at his mother. "She hurt you. She broke your sister's dish. She deserves—" That's when he hit me again. Not a slap this time. A punch, to my ribs, right below my breast. The air rushed out of my lungs. Pain exploded through my body. I doubled over, gasping, my arms instinctively wrapping around my stomach. And then he pushed me. I stumbled backward, trying to catch my balance, trying to protect my belly. My feet tangled. The room tilted. And then I was falling, my hip hitting the floor first, then my shoulder, my head cracking against the hardwood. For a moment, everything went black. When I came to, I don't know how much time had passed. Seconds? Minutes? I was lying on my side, curled around my belly. There was a sharp, terrible pain in my abdomen, and something wet between my legs. "Oh, God," I heard Patricia say. Her voice sounded far away. "Oh, God, David, what did you do?" I tried to speak, tried to tell them I needed help, but all that came out was a moan. My hands went to my stomach, feeling for movement, for any sign that my baby was okay. Nothing. No flutters. No kicks. Just pain and wetness and fear. "Mom, she's bleeding," David's voice said. He sounded different now. Panicked. Scared. "There's blood. There's so much blood." "Call 911!" Patricia was kneeling beside me now. I could see her face, swimming in and out of focus. She looked terrified. "Call them right now!" I heard David fumbling with his phone, heard him talking to the dispatcher, giving our address, saying there'd been an accident, like I'd fallen on my own, like he hadn't pushed me. Patricia's hand was on my forehead, smoothing back my hair. "Stay with me," she was saying. "Stay awake. Help is coming." "My baby," I managed to whisper. "Is my baby okay?" She didn't answer. She just kept smoothing my hair, and that's when I knew. That's when I understood that something was terribly, terribly wrong. The ambulance arrived in what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Paramedics rushed in. asking questions, checking my vitals, carefully moving me onto a stretcher. One of them, a young woman with kind eyes, leaned close. "What happened?" she asked quietly. I opened my mouth to tell her. To say that my husband had hit me, had pushed me, that this wasn't an accident. But David was right there, hovering, his hand on my arm, and the words wouldn't come. "She fell," David said before I could speak. "She tripped over a chair and fell. It happened so fast." The paramedic looked at me, at my face where I could feel a bruise forming from where he'd slapped me, at my arms where his fingerprints were probably already showing. She knew. I could see it in her eyes. She knew. But I didn't say anything. I just closed my eyes and let them take me. The ride to the hospital was a blur of pain and sirens and fear. They were monitoring the baby's heartbeat. I heard them saying things to each other in medical terminology I didn't understand. I kept asking, "Is she okay? Is my baby okay?" But no one would give me a straight answer. David rode in the front of the ambulance. Patricia, surprisingly, had followed in her car. I was alone in the back with the paramedics, and all I could think was that if my baby died, it would be my fault. I should have been more careful. I should have held the dish tighter. I should have seen David coming. I should have left years ago when the first red flags appeared. At the hospital, everything moved fast. They wheeled me into the ER, transferred me to a bed, hooked me up to machines. A doctor came in, a woman in her 50s with gray hair pulled back in a bun. She examined me while asking gentle questions. "Where does it hurt? Can you move your arms? Your legs? Any dizziness? Nausea?" David was in the room, standing in the corner. Every time the doctor asked a question, I'd glance at him before answering. He was watching me with this intense expression, like he was warning me, like he was daring me to tell the truth. "How did this happen?" the doctor asked, looking at the bruises that were starting to darken on my arms. "She fell," David said immediately, "tripped over a chair." The doctor looked at me. "Is that what happened?" I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. I could feel David's eyes on me, could feel the weight of everything that would happen if I told the truth. Would they take my baby away? Would I be homeless? Would he come after me? Would it get worse? "Yes," I heard myself say. I fell. The doctor's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't believe me, but she couldn't force me to tell the truth. "We need to do an ultrasound," she said. "Check on the baby. You have some significant bruising, and you've been bleeding. I want to make sure everything's okay." They wheeled in the ultrasound machine. The tech spread cold gel on my belly, moved the wand around, and we all stared at the screen. I held my breath, praying, begging God or the universe or anyone who was listening to please let my baby be okay. And then I heard it. The heartbeat. Fast and strong and steady. "There she is," the tech said, smiling. "Look at her go." I started crying, relief flooding through me so intensely I thought I might pass out. She was okay. My baby was okay. "The heartbeat is good," the doctor said, "but I'm still concerned about the bleeding. We're going to admit you overnight for observation. I want to monitor both you and the baby closely." They moved me to a room upstairs. David followed, still playing the concerned husband. He held my hand, kissed my forehead, told me everything was going to be okay, and I let him, because what else could I do? Patricia arrived about an hour later, bringing me a change of clothes and my phone charger. She looked awful, her eyes red and puffy like she'd been crying. She sat in the chair next to my bed while David went to get coffee. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Patricia said, very quietly, "I need to tell you something." I looked at her, at this woman who had made my life hell for 6 years, and waited. "My husband," she began, her voice shaking. "David's father. He used to hit me." The room seemed to tilt. I stared at her, unable to process what she was saying. "It started small," she continued, her eyes on her hands, not looking at me. "A shove here, a grab there. But it escalated. By the time David was born, I was covering bruises with makeup and making excuses to my friends. I told myself it was normal, that all marriages had rough patches, that if I just tried harder, if I was just better, he'd stop." She finally looked up at me, and her eyes were full of tears. "He never stopped. He got worse. And I stayed because I didn't know what else to do, because I was ashamed, because I thought it was my fault. And then one day, when David was 7, I was pregnant with my second child. My husband got angry about something, I don't even remember what, and he pushed me down the stairs. My hand went to my belly automatically. I lost the baby, Patricia said. A little girl. I was 5 months along. Just like you. The machines around us beeped steadily in the silence. After that, something in him changed. He was sorry, so sorry. He promised he'd never do it again, and he didn't. He never hit me again. But the damage was done. I couldn't look at him the same way. And when David was 18, I finally left. His father had a heart attack 2 years later, died before we could finalize the divorce. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because tonight, watching my son, her voice broke, watching David do to you what his father did to me, I saw it. I saw the pattern repeating. I saw what I've been denying for 6 years, that my son, my precious boy, he's just like his father, and I helped make him that way. Patricia, I enabled him. I excused him. I taught him that women exist to serve him, that his needs come first, that it's okay to control and manipulate and demand. I did to you what my mother-in-law did to me. I made your life hell because some sick part of me thought you deserved it, thought it was just how things are supposed to be. Tears were streaming down her face now, but watching him hit you tonight, watching you fall, and not knowing if your baby would survive, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. This isn't normal. This isn't okay. And I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her that her apology was too little too late. But another part of me, the part that was tired and scared and so desperately alone, just wanted someone to acknowledge what was happening, to validate that I wasn't crazy, that this wasn't my fault. What do I do? I whispered. Patricia reached out and took my hand. You leave him, tonight, as soon as you can. You take your baby and you go somewhere he can't find you. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't have any money saved. He controls our bank accounts. I thanks for it with co-mount. I'll help you, Patricia interrupted. I have money. Money my mother left me that I never told David or his father about. I'll give it to you. All of it. You can start over. You can be safe. I stared at her. Why would you do that? Because I failed you. I failed myself. I failed that baby I lost all those years ago. But I won't fail your daughter. I won't let her grow up watching her father hurt her mother. I won't let the cycle continue. Before I could respond, David walked back in with coffee. Patricia immediately let go of my hand and sat back in her chair, her face carefully neutral. But something had shifted. Some understanding had passed between us. David kissed my forehead, handed me a cup of water. How are you feeling? He asked, all concern and gentleness. I looked at him, at the mask he was wearing, at the monster underneath. Tired, I said. The doctor said they're going to keep you overnight. For observation. I know. I'll stay with you. I'm not leaving your side. But Patricia stood up. Actually, David, why don't you go home and get some rest? You've had a long day. I'll stay with her tonight. David's expression flickered. Mom, I should. You have work tomorrow. And you need to clean up the house. The broken dish is still all over the floor. I'll take care of her. There was something in her tone, some note of authority that made David pause. He looked between us, suspicious, but finally nodded. Okay, but call me if anything changes. I will. He kissed me again, told me he loved me, told me he was sorry about tonight, that he didn't know what came over him, that it would never happen again. All the classic lines, all the lies abusers tell themselves and their victims. And then he left. The moment the door closed behind him, Patricia turned to me. We don't have much time. By tomorrow, he'll be watching you like a hawk. We need to plan this now. For the next hour, she told me everything. She had $40,000 in a savings account David didn't know about. She'd give me access to it. She had a friend in New Mexico who ran a women's shelter. She'd call her, arrange for a bed. She'd help me pack my essentials while David was at work, drive me to the bus station, make sure I got away safely. What about you? I asked. What will David do when he finds out you helped me? I don't care, Patricia said firmly. Let him rage. Let him cut me out of his life. I deserve it for enabling him this long. But you don't deserve this. And neither does your baby. Why didn't you help yourself? I whispered. When you were in this situation, why didn't you leave sooner? Because I was weak. Because I was ashamed. Because no one offered me a way out. She squeezed my hand. But I'm offering you one now. Please, take it. I thought about my baby, about the life I wanted to give her. Not this, never this. I thought about my students, the girls who came to class with bruises they tried to hide, who flinched when men raised their voices. I thought about all the times I'd told myself to be strong, to endure, to make it work. And I realized that leaving wasn't weakness. Staying would be. Okay, I said. I'll go. The next morning, the doctors cleared me to go home. David picked me up, all apologetic and loving. He brought me flowers, promised he'd cook dinner, swore he'd never hurt me again. I played along, smiled weakly, let him help me to the car. Patricia arrived at our house that afternoon, while David was at work. She'd brought boxes, garbage bags, and a determination I'd never seen in her before. Pack only what you need, she said. Clothes, documents, photos. Nothing heavy, nothing he'll notice right away. I moved through my house like a ghost, gathering pieces of my life, my teaching certificates, my grandmother's necklace, the ultrasound pictures of my baby, a few books, some clothes. It all fit in 2 duffel bags. Patricia pressed an envelope into my hands. Inside was a debit card, a piece of paper with an account number and PIN, and $1,000 in cash. There's more in the account. Enough to start over. Enough to be safe. I'll pay you back, I said. I don't want you to. I want you to use it to build a life where you're happy, where you're free. That's all the payment I need. She drove me to the bus station. We didn't talk much during the drive. What was there to say? She'd enabled my abuse, but she was also the reason I was escaping it. The relationship was too complicated for simple words. At the station, she helped me buy a ticket to New Mexico. She hugged me tight, this woman who had been my tormentor and was now my savior. I'm proud of you, she whispered, for leaving, for being strong enough to do what I couldn't. I'm scared, I admitted. Being scared is okay. Being paralyzed by fear isn't. Go, live, raise your daughter somewhere safe, and maybe, someday, forgive me. I got on that bus with just 2 bags and a heart full of terror and hope. I left behind my house, my job, my entire life. But I was taking the most important thing with me, my baby, my chance at a future. David called that night, when he came home to an empty house. I didn't answer. He called 40 more times. I blocked his number. He showed up at my school the next day, but I was already gone. He filed a missing person report, but I was an adult making my own choices. The police couldn't force me to come back. Patricia told him what she'd done. He cut her out of his life completely. She told me later, through email, that it was worth it. That watching me escape had given her something she'd lost decades ago, hope. I had my daughter 6 months after I left, a healthy, beautiful girl with dark curls in my eyes. I named her Hope Patricia. Patricia for the woman who saved us, hope for what we'd become. It's been 30 years now. I rebuilt my life in New Mexico, got a job teaching at a community college, raised my daughter in a small apartment that was ours and only ours. Hope grew up strong and brave, never knowing the fear I'd lived with. She's a lawyer now, working with domestic violence victims. The cycle ended with her. Patricia and I stayed in touch over the years. She never reconciled with David. He remarried twice, divorced twice. Both ex-wives had stories similar to mine. Some people never change. Patricia passed away last year, at 87. In her will, she left me one final gift, that casserole dish. Or rather, the pieces of it, which she'd kept all these years, carefully boxed. And a note. This dish broke that night, she'd written. But you didn't. You're stronger than broken ceramic. You're proof that even shattered things can be made whole again. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to do the right thing. I keep those pieces on my shelf now, a reminder of the worst night of my life and the moment everything changed. When I look at them, I don't see destruction. I see the beginning. I see the exact moment when 2 women decided that the cycle of abuse would end with them. If you're reading this, if you're living in fear in your own home, if you're making excuses for someone who hurts you, please know this: it's not your fault. You're not weak. You're not stupid. You're not overreacting. And you deserve better. You deserve safety. You deserve respect. You deserve love that doesn't come with bruises. And you deserve someone who will put your needs, your feelings, your life above their own ego. Leaving is terrifying. I won't lie to you about that. You'll be scared. You'll doubt yourself. You'll wonder if you're making a mistake. But staying is worse. Staying teaches your children that love looks like violence. Staying chips away at your soul until you don't recognize yourself anymore. I was one of the lucky ones. I had someone help me escape. But even if you don't, there are resources, hotlines, shelters, advocates who understand. You're not alone. Even when you feel most isolated. I survived. I thrived. My daughter thrived. And you can too. The cycle can end with you. You just have to be brave enough to take that first step, to make that phone call, to pack that bag, to get on that bus. Your life is waiting for you on the other side of your fear, and it's beautiful. It's worth fighting for. You are worth fighting for.